Welcome to the bottom line, a wrap of the business news for the day. And let's start in the skies. The clock is ticking for the government to come up with at least 5 billion rand to fund the SAA rescue plan. SAA's business rescue practitioners have given the government until Thursday to come up with the cash, or else the troubled national airline may be liquidated.
In terms of a business rescue plan agreed to by the government, SAA creditors and trade unions, government is supposed to provide 10 billion rand to fund the restructuring of SAA. Half of that is needed now to pay for voluntary severance packages to around 3,000 SAA employees who have opted to leave the company and to start a new restructured national airline. The SAA business rescue practitioners say they need the money by Thursday. The rescue practitioners say failure by the government to come up with the money will force them to call a creditors meeting on Friday, where the fate of SAA, which could include liquidation, will be decided. Government has hinted that it's prepared to meet the deadline.
The DPE has been working very hard together with the National Treasury to ensure that the restructuring of SAA is a success. An announcement will be made pretty soon about the funding issues with regards to the restructuring.
Government voluntarily placed SAA under business rescue late last year in order to save it from liquidation. It says it's still committed to saving the national airline from total collapse.
We've also met with transaction advisors who are helping the government assess a number of interests expressed by companies in South Africa and also companies from abroad who would like to partner up with the new SAA. The public will be kept informed of these exciting processes.
For SAA, the next 3 days will be crucial. Mbongeni Muchwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Another possible big decision this week. Economists are divided on how the Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank will move when they meet to decide on the repo rate this week. Some believe the benchmark rate will be kept unchanged at 3.5% on the back of inflation rising towards the midpoint of the Reserve Bank's target bracket. Others say the bank will likely cut interest rates by a further 25 basis points because of the worse economic projection for this year. Well, RMB economists say the low inflation environment and the weak economic growth will likely boost chances of another interest rate cut. Investec economist Camilla Kaplan says inflation is forecast to increase towards the mid-range of the target range next year, supporting the argument for an unchanged repo rate. The Reserve Bank has so far cut interest rates by 300 basis points, or 3 percentage points, to 3.5%, cushioning indebted consumers and businesses against the effects of COVID-19. Stats SA is also expected to release the July retail trade sales this week. It's expected that data will reflect some improvement on the back of the easing lockdown restrictions. Now, COVID-19 has delayed plans to finalize the finer details of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. A crucial summit intended to iron out some of the issues was postponed until later this year as a result of the pandemic. But director at the Gibbs Center for African Management and Markets, Professor Adrian Saville, says all is not lost.
While the coronavirus pandemic may have dampened plans to finalize outstanding issues pertaining to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, experts say it cannot stop the long-term benefits of the agreement, which was ratified by 54 of the 55 African Union member states. This as the overwhelming support, policy and sentiment surrounding the pact, which promises to increase intra-Africa trade from 18% to 50%, remain in place. The World Bank expects its success to boost Africa's income by nearly 450 billion rand.
What sits in that Continental Free Trade Agreement is low-hanging fruit. In the world of economics, it's what you would call a free lunch, that you can get into win-win collaborative trade arrangements. COVID-19, of course, has put a brake on that, but not a stop to it. The real story sits in the substantial gains that can be had in terms of economic growth, industrial development, employment, increasing collaboration in neighbors and in the region. That's the real benefit.
According to Professor Saville, there are some supply chain opportunities that will mitigate the impact of the pandemic. He predicts many businesses will be looking to establish new supply chains after relying on a manufacturing hub like China for years.
It may well be the case that in order to mitigate this risk or moderate this risk, buyers, supply chains want to granularize. And on this score, Africa sits with two very strong competitive advantages. The one is geographical competitive advantage, particularly to Europe, and in the same breath, with geography, you get time zone competitive advantage.
But he also warns that South Africa and the rest of the continent will have to speed up its infrastructure plans. Balenhle Mthethwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Recycling Week. Activities and events are held aimed at raising awareness to consumers and businesses about the environmental and climate change impact of waste. Today, the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries held a circular economy webinar under the theme Advancing Circularity and Sustainable Consumption. Earlier, we spoke to Momokhala Musekene, the acting DDG for Chemicals and Waste Management at the governmental department. She began by defining what a circular economy is.
A circular economy is an approach to producing services and products that makes sure that they stay longer in the economy. So we are trying to move away from a linear economy where the production of products is just by using and maybe throwing away, which we usually manage through a landfill site in terms of landfilling. However, with circular economy, once a product is used for a longer period, not just a single use, but making sure that it stays longer, and also it goes into making other products at the end of its life cycle. So we don't throw it away. It's a material that comes back and be turned into the same product or other materials.
All right. So the recycling in South Africa is set to provide formal work for around 8,000 citizens. And when it comes to more informal jobs, around 60,000 people are employed in that sector. Considering our dire economic state now, what's the potential for growth and employment in that sector?
Yes, the green economy and specifically waste has been identified as an area of growth, and currently we are making sure that we stimulate that part of the economy through the implementation of what we call as extended producer responsibility that we have prioritized for 3 sectors. And this extended producer responsibility is an approach wherein producers of products, the 3 sectors that we have prioritized is electrical and electronic equipment, lighting, as well as paper, packaging, and some of the single-use products. So we have engaged the producers of those products such that when those products reach the end of their life, those producers invest in the management of the waste products arising from their products. So what it would entail, it would mean there has to be collection systems that are in our communities, and that collection would lead to those waste products getting to the recyclers that would process those waste products into the same products or into other products.
All right, there's yeah.
I wanted to say the indications in terms of the potential jobs that would be created. The lighting sector has indicated about 800 jobs. The electrical and electronic equipment has indicated close to 8,500 jobs. And paper, packaging, and some of the single-use products has estimated over 11,000 jobs that could be created from this EPR, extended producer responsibility schemes being implemented.
Okay, when we're speaking about clothing, there's quite a big industry in Europe that recycles their clothes and then brings them, some people would say dumps them, in countries like South Africa, in countries like the DRC, and those are unsold. When it comes to the circular economy, does clothing, how much of a role does clothing and clothing waste play in what happens there?
Yes, so clothing also has opportunities for reuse because most of the seasonal items are based on fashion. So it's if you look at the economy, how it's set up, other people would just want to wear what is fashionable for that season, and then beyond that they would want to get rid of it. But others, it's more about the basic clothing items. So yes, clothing or textiles, you have opportunities for reuse. So when we talk reuse, it means it's not necessarily considered as waste as yet, because it can be still used or be worn. It's still intact as a garment. But also there are opportunities to recycle the textile into other forms of products. It can be processed and then goes into making other products. So it's an area that it can be used to demonstrate circularity. However, most of the clothes are still reused, not necessarily to say they can't be reused, because reuse is a big component of the textile industry.
All right, a quick overview of the numbers now. Bidvest releasing results today, and it's warned of more retrenchments. So this is not great news. This is a very big group involved in freight and finance and many more companies. And it says up to 400 people could be affected. The share price up quite dramatically, over 5%. So investors not displeased with what they heard today. The JSE up 0.5%, and the rand quite strong on the back of a weaker dollar. Also, because there's this general good mood across markets after the vaccine trial from Oxford University, the one that we as South Africa are involved in, was resumed over the weekend after a pause. It's at the most advanced stage. So hopes once again for a COVID-19 vaccine. Let's see how the markets ended.